welcome back to episode 4 of Geeks From The Multiverse. I'm Matt. With me is John. Say what's up, John.
Yeah. What's up, everybody?
So, the thing we do if you're new to this podcast is we like to either discuss or debate different topics related to geek culture. We play stupid games and try to have as much fun as possible without getting into trouble.
That is an understatement, but okay. So, today's episode, we're going to be talking about video game TV show adaptations, right? So, we're getting away from the movies, and we're going to go right into different TV shows that have adapted very popular video games, per se. So, for example, I'm not going to go into this much detail, but Last of Us is definitely a big topic, especially nowadays. It's going to be an interesting, again, show. We're going to be talking about that as well. But anyways, again, like Matt was saying, we're going to be talking about different interests and passions that, over the episodes, and we're going to be making sure that you guys, as best as we can, explain what our thoughts and our views and in different ways to really explore the geek culture as a whole, right? So, but again, we'll be talking about TV shows and how they may or may not have done well, but I would say majority of our list, I think we've done a good job of movies, or sorry, let me rephrase that, TV shows that actually have done pretty well in our standards, right? So, without further ado, let's dive right in. Let's get geeky.
All right, so John, what superpower ability would you want to have if you could only use it for practical means? That's my question. So, this would only be like work, hobbies, at home. The specific rules for this question, powers would not be for, say, world domination, crime fighting, or becoming some sort of like vigilante like Batman. Powers can have any origin. We don't have to come up with an origin of how they came up with, but they can have any origin. And again, they're for practical use, and not used to like defeat criminals or necessarily to save the world or dominate the world. You know what I mean? I definitely, for me, I go in between two. And being one that has worked in human services for as long as I have, especially being a substance abuse counselor, the very first one that I think would have been the most useful for practical means would be to read and control minds. And I understand, the idea behind it would be entirely intrusive, right?
Right.
But if you think about being a substance abuse counselor, the difficulties that counselors already have connecting with people who are using drugs and alcohol, people who come from, really abusive and traumatic life experiences, they're not talking about it. And to have them try to open up when they only see me for 30 minutes a month is extremely difficult. So I can only just imagine the amount of good I could actually do with the ability to, one, read what's in somebody's mind so that I can at least address it and have that open dialogue with somebody. And then on top of that, the word control would mean like I could basically tell them to go get me a cheeseburger or, go get me a job and hand over your check to me. And that's not like the intent of me controlling the mind. It would be for me to be able to maybe put walls up around somebody who's dealing with suicide.
Okay.
Putting, more positive thoughts into somebody's mind who may be suffering from depression.
Yeah, good choice.
Somebody who uses and abuses drugs, I can put those blocks in to somebody's mind that would tell them whenever they have that thought, sort of like hypnosis, I guess, where when they think about picking up, there's some sort of adverse thought that comes in, like they get, sick, or they start singing, or they do something else that's like different from what they want to do, and that thought is gone.
Right. Instead of having negative thoughts control their mind, have those positive thoughts instead. So that way they can basically change their behaviors and hopefully in a more positive environment and setting, right?
Right. And then the ability to read the mind and being able to see the thing that is traumatic that they're thinking about and not saying, and being able to address it in such a way where I'm not, flagrantly going, hey, I see that you were abused in this way, and they look at me and walk out the door, but being able to see it in somebody's mind and then coming up with ways to bring it out of them naturally.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. And that's a good choice. I think that, when you're using it in that sense, yes, I think I could see that being a very practical power and not so much, like you said, world domination and be like,
this could be abused.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. Instead of like, hey, man, I need you to give me a cheeseburger. And I need you right now. You're like, no, like, why do I want to use that for personal gain instead of like trying to, help somebody else's situation? So I think that's a good choice. Personally.
And the other one that I go to would be super speed. And I think super speed will only work in conjunction if my mental capacity could work just as fast.
I also think that could also get you into trouble sometimes, but I mean,
yes.
Yeah, depending on which way you go.
But the ability to get things done very fast, the ability to learn things just as fast, is certainly a benefit. To be able to get anywhere I want to, not needing a car, is certainly a benefit. The only reason I don't pick this as my number one is I think I would start to look down on people that move slower than I do.
Right. Because everything in the world around you is going so quickly.
Right.
And you're not appreciating the moment
I would think fast. I would move fast. I would want to keep doing things fast. And for me to have to wait for your next thought, I would instantly become annoyed in my heart. And I would move away from you because you don't move as fast as I do. And that's where I don't use that as my number one, because I think that's where I would start to carry that like feeling, and then I would start isolating myself.
Right. With super speed, I think it has its pros and cons, right? I mean, it's great because then you could do things so quickly and get everything done, and you would have so much time. You could actually make more episodes like a podcast, right? But like you said, living in the moment, so being present in the moment, that's ideally what we want to do, because even though you might have that much time on your hands, if somebody's not fast enough to, relate to you on that level, you're going to be annoyed, you're going to be upset, you're going to be like, why isn't everything just moving at my speed? But then you have to take a step back and be like, well, unless they had those same abilities, it's really useless.
Like I could go to work and I can get my work done in literally faster than I can blink my eyes. Right. But then my boss could turn around and go, well, you still have to be here for 8 hours, so what's the point in what you just did?
Right. So thank you for doing 30 minutes, and enjoying yourself. Yeah.
Thanks for doing less than 30 seconds worth of work, but you still have to be here. So go help somebody else. And then I can literally, in the fact, I don't know how fast I would work, but probably in a minute do everybody else's work and still have like 7 hours left. Right. And go, what else do you want me to do?
Right. And I mean, granted, work production is going to be amazing, but at the end of the day, is that really teaching you or the others like how to actually do those particular jobs?
It certainly has a less of a human connection. Practical means, yes, like there's so much like you could get done. Obviously, one aspect you have to work as fast as technology works too.
Right. And we all know that most technology, depending on where you work, does not work
that fast.
No, and it pretty much sucks.
But certainly super speed was not my first one. Certainly getting to where I want to go would be practical, but
Be like, hey guys, you want me to go to take out in China, or like, or like, hey, let's go to Italy and get a pizza, or something like that'd be cool. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's like, is it
Say, hey, you want to order pizza? And like, hey, I got this from Italy.
just for you, but
Yeah.
just personal? So
that's not really practical.
well,
but,
no, it's not. No, I mean that's just more personal game. But so now that you mentioned your two, I'm gonna mention two that are a little different, of course. So my first one, I think, for the most part, I think it would be pretty practical. But I know it would help me, and it would definitely help other people if needed. So the one I did for my number one is teleportation. Okay, I always thought it was a cool power. I always thought it was a very interesting one because imagine just like you said, not having to take a vehicle and just like, all right, oh, I'm gonna be late. Nope, just kidding. I can get there like 10 minutes early. Like me, that would be amazing. I could just wake up, and just like all of a sudden, oh, I'm at work now. No problem. Like no big deal. Or if I, like you said, being able to, instead of having to like pay for like air travel or, going on a cruise ship or going, whatever, that would take like days on end. I could just be there in like 1 second and be like, all right, guys, hey, we're going to go on a trip for free. And you don't have to pay anything. We're just, we'll pay for like the hotel or do whatever. And I think it'd be interesting because, like, for example, if like, I needed to go grocery shopping or if I needed to do that real quick for my family, I could just be like, cool, I'm going to go, I'm going to get my stuff and I'm going to leave. And I don't even have to waste gas. I could just go do my thing, whatever. But I think it's a unique power because it kind of gives you a sense of you're not going so fast, but it allows you to like, if like I was in, let's say Japan, right? And if I wanted to go visit my friends, right? I could be like, hey, I'm going to take a trip real quick. Hold on. Hang out with you for like a couple hours and then come right back and be like, hey man, that was amazing. I could literally be in, wherever in a moment's notice and I wouldn't have to be, traveling hours on end just to go, see my friend or something like that or visit a family member. So I think it would be, interesting too because like, for example, it's kind of a weird one, but like, let's say your friend like I don't know, like a medical emergency, right? So you could help them, you can bring them to the hospital and you can like literally say, "Okay, we're going to be there in like a second. Just give me a second and we'll pop you there." Like I think it would help because then you're literally in some ways, yeah, I mean, of course it'll help yourself, but it would also like let's say if you saw a medical emergency, you can get them in a moment's notice and you can hopefully save that person's life, which I'm not saying it's again changing the world, trying to save the whole world, but like if you saw that in the moment, I think it would help, So that would be my number one.
I see like when I think of teleportation, I always think of like Nightcrawler.
Yeah,
and I think of like in one of the X-Men movies, like they're trying to ask him like, hey, can you teleport us into this place? And he's like, well, I could, but if I don't know what's in there, I could teleport you basically into a wall.
Right.
And that would be like I always think of that like if I had teleporting as a power, like I would be that guy that would be like, yeah, hey, let's go to France. We'll teleport, in front of this bistro. We'll look it up on Google, like,
Yeah.
oh, it's right there. And then like maybe we don't know, and like this bistro put a table right where that picture is, and I'm like,
Right.
we're gonna go right here. You ready? And like this bistro put a table right in that spot.
Right.
And now
you
we
hit it, yeah.
teleport right in the middle of that table, and we're like, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, technical difficulties. So the other thing too, like if you were to take it as like even a step further, so I know a movie, not even in like probably geek culture, but like the movie Jumper, right? So like he uses his powers to like rob banks and
Oh yeah.
goes to do other things.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that, but like that would be like if you were kind of like an evil criminal mastermind, right? Like you're like, oh hey, look, I'm gonna go rob some banks. I'm gonna go. If I needed an escape plan, well, I'm myself as the escape plan. I could just go travel wherever I need to go. But with the power itself, I think it's a good. It can be good and it can be evil. It really depends on the person and how you want to use it as a more practical means. But the second one, This one I didn't choose as my first one only because, again, this one has pros and cons as well. And I think it's a very, I would say, I wouldn't say generic, but it's definitely one that, I think most people, if they had it, I think they would use it, but then they would definitely abuse it in a lot of different ways. But super strength, right? So everyone would love to just be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go pick up my car real quick and, lift it up, show everybody like, hey, I can do it with one hand, with one finger, whatever. But the reason why I would say it'd be kind of interesting is because think about all the chores around your house, or like if you had to, like, let's say move somebody into another place, like you would
You
do
would
it
be
like,
that guy.
you would be that guy all the time. Like you'd be like, hey man, we need your muscles, man.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Hey, we need your strength.
We need your strength.
Yeah.
We need to do this. But like I think in like practical means, like, yeah, you could do that, but you could also do like let's say if somebody was out in the middle of a forest and let's say the boulder hit them and like you can't move it or whatever. Yeah, you'd be like, hold on, throw it off the cliff, or if there was a cliff nearby, whatever. You could help and save that person too. But I say this is where the cons come in. So if you're too strong, imagine if you're trying to hug somebody and you
Right.
almost kill them because you're that strong and you can't,
Or
do
you go to,
certain things.
you go to shake somebody's hand, and there are people that do this all the time. Like when you go to shake their hand, they go, no, really shake my hand.
Yeah, and you're like,
And,
okay.
and you're like, okay. But if you're that guy that has super
Yeah.
strength and you go to shake somebody's hand and you're trying to be like really, you're
Like-
trying to just be really
Yeah.
soft with it, and they're like, okay, really shake my hand. And you really grasp that guy's hand
and you break their hand.
and you're basically pulling back dust. That could be a problem.
Well, yeah, I mean that could be a huge problem, but like,
It could be like really good practical thing. Like if your wife is like, I can't open this jar of pickles, and you're like, pop.
pop, and then basically you break the whole jar. But I agree that it, like I said, it has its pros. It
You'd
has
be the
its cons.
greatest arm wrestler in history.
Oh my god, you'd be killing everybody. Like guys like, was it the Mountain? Like like this big dude. He's like, yeah, come on, yeah, hold on, let me show you my scrawny hand real quick, and let's see if we can do this. But I just think that super strength can be good if it's practical, but realistically, it's probably one that can definitely be abused in so many other regards. But yeah,
So TV shows, John.
mm-hmm.
There's not a whole lot of video game adaptations.
No, I know because I know both of us looked this up, and it was really hard to kind of like get a good list. We don't. I will mention this to the listeners, but we were trying to find ones that were more successful than failures per se, depending on which way we look at it.
I definitely have, more failures
I might say
on my list. I think.
I could probably say maybe one, maybe like probably did a good job, but didn't like really hit the mark, kind of a thing. But
Yeah. So let me just get this one out of the way. So it's just out there.
Okay.
I did mention it in our first episode, very briefly, but I do want to bring this one up.
Okay.
And 2022, there was a show on Netflix for Resident Evil.
I already know this is going to be bad, but okay.
And I'm putting it out there. This is my own opinion, but this was by far the worst adaptation of Resident Evil that has come out. And not only was like the story bad, the acting was terrible. The story was terrible. They changed and retconned pretty much the whole thing. Like what I said in the first episode, they created basically a whole new Resident Evil universe. You know
So
what I mean?
like an alternate timeline.
This new universe was set in 2036. So Raccoon City, which was the city that Resident Evil takes place in,
Right.
was called the New Raccoon City.
Ooh.
New.
Ready? So original.
Air quotes. New Raccoon City.
Sure.
And the two main characters, which were these two like teenage girls, not in any of the games whatsoever. They're brand new characters. New characters.
Hmm.
You had Wesker, who is, I believe, the professor that was in the games. He was basically the one who created the T-virus.
So the initial virus of changing.
But
people
again, you have 2036, so he's not the original. He can't be the original guy.
No, it would have to be way further in the past in that case.
Yeah, because you're talking 98, and this is 2036, so he'd have to be very, very old. Which in the show he's not that old.
Okay.
And you have a few characters that were in the games, but for the most part, this was a brand new story that they were telling, and it just wasn't a good show. And it's no surprise that even after, before the first season was even done, they canceled it. Shocker.
Not surprising.
The show, I mean, I did watch the whole thing. It just wasn't good. And it didn't even end well. Like a show generally has some kind of a, you start kind of with the introduction, you get the build up, you get that climax event in the show. And then, kind of that last episode would either bring you to maybe what the next season would be, or that finalization point. This show, I don't know what happened at the end. It just ended.
Wow.
I don't know what happened. You're watching and you go, none of this makes sense. And for anybody who hasn't watched this movie, just go watch the movie. Like, just go watch this TV show. Because by the end of the TV show, you will probably say the same thing of going, I don't know what just happened. Because now it's all backwards. So that one to me is like, it's by far the worst adaptation as far as TV shows. And as far as any adaptation, like, this doesn't do anything for Resident Evil. Especially when you're looking at the video games. Like, even the original movies, this goes underneath those. I would rather watch the original movies than whatever that pile of junk was.
It when you're describing all of this, it's like it doesn't even make me want to watch the TV show. It just makes me just want to be like, okay, there's a trash can, let's throw it in the fire and like get rid of it and like never.
They probably
talk
should
about it.
just remove it from the Netflix catalog altogether, and they'd be better off.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of like TV shows and movies that could definitely do that too, but like they don't do that. They just like leave it there and they're like, oh, if you want to watch it, go ahead. If you want to see something that sucks, maybe cheesy, here you go. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to my first one that I want to talk about for the video game to TV shows, so this one's kind of it's a different one. I don't believe Matt's played this game going into like the TV show, but the TV show is called the Cuphead show. Okay, and it was like the Cuphead and but basically the video games that came out I think a few years back. It was on the Nintendo Switch. So the show is about literally these two basically like Cupheads basically, and they're brothers. And so they get into like weird, silly situations. Like one is like the main part of the game is like, I believe Cuphead is the main, like there's Cuphead and Mughead, or it's something stupid basically. But Cuphead basically sells his soul to the devil. And yeah, it sounds weird, I know, but it's legit. It's literally
sounds awful.
I know. And so he was playing. What is it? Like you go into like arcade, like not I'm trying to think of the game itself, but it's like you're rolling a ball onto the like the different
like skee ball.
Skee ball. My God, I don't know why I can't think today. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. So skee ball, he's playing skee ball, right? And basically, the game is if you lose, you basically sell your soul to the devil. And so he lost, even though he was winning all this time, and he lost this one time. And the devil basically is trying to steal his soul. And so the entire time, they're both like, trying to get out of situations that the devil's creating for them. And it's kind of weird. And I know that Christians probably, it's kind of a weird show as itself. But the game, I tried to play it, and I did not realize how hard this game was. Like, I tried playing the first like few levels, and holy crap! Like, it should not be this hard in the first 3 levels of a game. And
Especially
it was
a game about a Cuphead.
well, and it made it really interesting because it's kind of like an old school like 1940s setting, but it was like you're kind of going back and forth on like these like mini bosses like for each level. So you're going through the game and you're kind of like defeating like it could be random. Like there's some random characters in this game. There's like a flying like Ursula like creature. It is weird. Again, it's a really weird kind of show as well as the game. But I think with the TV show aspect, I think if you like some like silly humor, like if you have nothing to do, kind of like watch the show, it's definitely entertaining. But again, if you're not, if you're let's say a certain set of beliefs, right? If like you're Christian or something like that, you're probably not gonna maybe want people to watch it per se, because it does like portray the devil as it is, and it's more of an animated cartoon, but it's more like a 1940s cartoon like style game, and it's definitely an interesting watch, but it's something that you would do like on a random Saturday night and be like, you know what, I'm gonna watch something stupid. Like let's just watch these 2 cupheads and like Mughead, and just go into it and watch them get into like silly situations that you're like, all you had to do was do one thing and it would have changed the entire episode. Like they would basically like, oh, I'm gonna play this game with him, and then all of a sudden they come across a random bear, and this bear's like, I don't know, I think they're like trying to steal their like the bear's honey or something like that. And all of a sudden, of course, the bear's gonna get upset. Like that's generally how that's going to work, and they're just like, whatever, and they're trying to get away from the bear. And again, it's random. It's totally stupid. I just know that the way they did the game and the way they did the TV show, it does match up for the most part, like references wise, but it is really, it's a stupid game and a stupid show if you like want to watch something, random like that. But, yeah, it's definitely one that I wouldn't say like, hey guys, like that's my number 1 pick. Like that is definitely not my number 1 video game choice or like adaptation wise.
I'm curious, John, which one of us you would consider Cuphead and which one you would consider Mughead?
So that's a tough one. So like Cuphead's this like, he's more mischievous. Like he's the one that always gets like Mughead into trouble.
Mughead's, oh, so you.
Oh, really? So Mughead's the more sensible, responsible one in a sense?
Oh, so me.
Oh, so you're saying I'm Cuphead, you're Mughead. Okay. So, I mean, okay, fine. I guess, sure. I'll be Cuphead, you'll be Mughead. We'll call it a day. And maybe next time we'll dress up in cosplay and we'll go on to that.
All right. Biggest Xbox game back in the 90s. Do you know what that game would be?
Biggest Xbox game back in the 90s. I'm pretty sure that the Xbox came out a little after, like definitely.
It was like 2001-ish.
Yeah, it was definitely it was definitely after the millennium. Yeah.
Yeah. But biggest Xbox game, I would say, in the 2000s then.
I would say Halo.
You would be correct.
Okay. And yeah.
2022, of course, Halo came out. Paramount Plus.
Of course.
Right. So I can say, it was great to see a live action version of Master Chief.
I can agree with that because when you're playing the games and when you're let's say seeing this for the first time,
Yeah.
you want to see him like really be a badass kind of character,
Yeah.
showing him off.
And so, Halo, I think when you first like, oh, they're making a show on Halo, that's so awesome. And you have all these really high expectations, and like you see the actor in the Master Chief outfit, in the armor, you're watching the show, you see the vehicles, you see the weapons, that pink spike gun that's in the game.
Yeah,
You
that's an
actually
iconic
see it
gun.
being used in the show. They definitely did a great job of using the elements from the game in the show. The one problem with the show, and I'm going to just throw this out there, because I can't be the only one that had this problem. Within the first episode, and I don't know if it's within the first 10 or 15 minutes, but it's very early within the first episode, he immediately takes his helmet off.
Which, in the original trilogy, never once has he taken off his helmet.
He never once took his helmet. And I understand, we have a show like The Mandalorian, right?
Right.
And the only time he really took his helmet off within the first couple seasons was only a couple times.
And
it was at the end of the season.
Well, even in the new season itself, like he's actually trying to redeem himself in that sense. So
right.
Unless he's trying to redeem himself later on, then yeah, it's kind of pointless.
In the show, he takes his helmet off very early in that first episode, and I actually I didn't show you this, but there's this really funny meme.
Oh, it's a meme,
and I've seen it before. It actually comes from Monster, the animated.
Oh, Monsters Inc.
Monsters
yes,
Inc.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yep.
When Mike Wazowski is singing put that thing back where it came from, or so help me.
Yeah, the song that he did. Yep.
Yeah. And the top thing says Halo TV show removes Chief's helmet. Everyone, put that thing back where it came from, or so help me.
Yeah. Yeah.
My first initial reaction when he took the helmet off, I was like, wait, he's like a really ugly dude?
Wait, are you saying like he's like Deadpool? Like Ryan Reynolds, like when he takes
he just takes his
off?
helmet off, and it's like the same scene in Star Wars when Kylo Ren takes his helmet off.
Ah.
And I'm going, wait, what? That's what he really looks like?
This guy does not look like what I would have expected, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not at all what I expected. And then throughout the whole season, every episode he's taking his helmet off whenever he gets whenever he gets the opportunity, he just willy-nilly takes his helmet off whenever he wants. And when I've played the games, he never took his helmet off. Not until the later games, you would see a cutscene with him not with the helmet on, but there was never a cutscene or anything with no helmet. He always had the helmet.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like Halo, even when you're playing the original trilogy, not even Infinite or Reach or any of those, when you're playing the game, Master Chief is this really badass character who straight up annihilates aliens and he just does whatever he wants. He's that guy. He's that action hero that you want him to make sure he wins the battle, which he did every single time. But it's almost like downplaying the character because of the show now.
The show definitely downplayed Master Chief, and if you really look at how they were playing the character of Master Chief, it really was kind of like an introduction to who he is supposed to become. You know what I mean? So
like a prequel.
Taking the helmet off, showing more emotion, even though, what we know of the character, Master Chief didn't have any emotion because he was not someone who was, they removed his emotions. That's the character. He was made that way.
Right. I mean, he literally, like you said, he shows no emotion. He's very, hey, You know, he's very monotone. Like he's
Yeah.
not supposed to be this like emotional character, like, you know, showing human emotions, not anything like that. So when you start seeing that, you're like, what? Like, is this really how
So
we're gonna play this?
the show in general, though, I mean, is it a good show? Yes, it's still a good show. There's still, enough nostalgia for Halo fans to watch the show and see like, oh, hey, there's the same vehicles. They're going to the same planets. They're showing the aliens that you fight against in the game.
So if I'm
There's
not,
enough in the show that you can watch it and get that fulfillment from the game. Does it follow the story from the game? I don't know if it's 100%.
so my follow up question is like, how is Cortana like in the show? Like, is it like in the movie, or not the movie, the video games itself? Like, it's this like hologram, or like this robotic kind of being, but then like, if I'm not mistaken, it's like an actual person as Cortana, right? Not like an android or some kind of like robotic.
So
being.
it kind of evolves throughout the show. And it's hard to explain. You really have to watch the show,
Yeah.
and that's why the show is more of a prequel, because it starts really as the purpose that it's created was to more control Master Chief than it was to help
Okay.
for the narrative of the show. And then by the end of the show, which is kind of the more frustrating aspects of the show, is Cortana is more of that AI help that's like in the game, you have that like, enemy over there, reload, you have that constant, enemies coming, enemies incoming, you have like the constant back and forth with Cortana telling you like different things of like, hey, there's this on the map, destination here on the map, different things of importance that you need to get to or do, or enemies are coming or whatever, what have you.
Right.
She doesn't start doing that for Master Chief until right at the almost very end of the show.
If I'm not mistaken, like, are they trying to renew like another season of it, or is it just like,
I believe so.
okay, because like you're saying, like in the first season,
It just came out last year, so
well,
I'd be
yeah.
guessing there would be a season 2.
Okay. I was just only curious because I didn't know if like it was good enough to continue, or if they were gonna be like, we're canceling it, like that's it.
I think for a season 2, they would definitely have to make like significant changes. They should do better. Like they should definitely make better decisions regarding Master Chief
Okay.
with season 2. Like I think with the taking his helmet off and the different decisions that they made with Master Chief, they definitely should improve and keeping his character closer to what was in the games.
Yeah, using the video game source, like the actual reference
Right.
to make it happen.
The show is another one of those prime examples of them using and that Halo is just chock full of elements from the game.
Right.
Not so much keeping the characters and keeping everything cohesive. When you get to the characters, you start kind of losing. It starts leaking a little bit. And the
Yeah.
more that it leaks, the more you start kind of falling away from a lot of it. So, is it a good show? Yes. Is it worth watching? It is. If you can get by him taking his helmet off like 4 or 5 times every episode.
So, I want to mention this one. So this one is Mortal Kombat Legacy. So this TV show, I've never watched it until literally last night. Like it was one that I know Matt was like, "Hey, you should watch it." And I was like, "Okay." So I watched it, and originally it was a web series on YouTube, and they came out on HBO Max pretty recently.
Pleasantly surprising, actually.
It was surprising, and a lot of it. So a lot of these episodes are about like 10, 12 minutes long, if I'm not mistaken. So, and it basically goes over the backstories on a lot of the characters. So like Raiden, Liu Kang, Kung Lao,
Cyrax,
So-
Center,
yeah,
Scorpion, Sub-Zero.
right. All the main
Yep.
characters. And so what I found interesting, because Matt and I talked about this before, is so the one episode about Raiden. So it even says this was like an alternate like timeline.
Alternate timeline, alternate universe
Yeah,
type thing.
and it definitely when you saw the character, I was like, I know in the like the games, like he's not a Caucasian guy, and it was kind of a like a weird version of him for sure, and it was definitely it looked fan made. Um, but a lot of the other characters they were showing, like Jax, Sonya, Kano, all those other ones, like I would say it's for the most part pretty accurate on how they did it.
I actually liked, in particular, I liked how they did the Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Baihan, Hanzo story, because
Yeah,
they actually didn't change their language from whatever they were speaking. I don't know if it was like Japanese or I don't know what, it was an Asian language, but they didn't actually change the language to English, or
Yeah.
they didn't overdub it. It
No.
was in their original language, subtitled,
yes,
which I actually really appreciated.
yeah, and it was nice to see that, and it was also very nice to see.
And they didn't add a weird baby.
That's true. They didn't add another child to the mix of the whole thing, but it was interesting too because the last episode was on like Cyrex and Sector, and then it goes straight into the tournament, and you get to see other characters like Melina and Katana and Shao Kahn, and you actually see Shang Tsung as kind of a younger, little bit older, probably. I don't know. It's kind of weird, but
Yeah.
it was interesting because then also Johnny Cage was also in the first season, totally different person. I'm pretty sure Matt had a comment about that originally, but I'm not going to go with the comment. But
I'm not going to make that comment, but I will say in the first season that Johnny Cage was not like, if you would picture Johnny Cage, this guy was not it. He was not it. Now, second season, I believe Casper Van Dien was who played Johnny Cage in that second season. A little bit more closer to what you would envision Johnny Cage being, like a more attractive looking guy.
yeah.
The first season, that guy was not attractive one bit. He was not charismatic.
Well, he was also kind of a pompous, but he.
Well, that's Johnny Cage,
I mean,
but
no,
this
but,
guy
like,
was not good looking, and he was
full of rage, man. Like he was on another level. Like that was not the Johnny Cage I would have seen in like the video games itself. But like with the tournament though, it was interesting because it was not what I would have expected, because usually they would, a lot of it was like at a temple, they're fighting, they're doing this. Like this was like real world, like fighting against like,
yeah.
what was it, Kenshi, and I think it was, I can't remember his name. Anyways, but like when a lot of them were fighting, I know Johnny Cage actually, it was funny. Johnny Cage and it was Katana were versing Melina, and Katana was fighting Melina, and then Johnny Cage was like running away.
Yeah,
he was like,
out.
I'm out of here, man. Like he was running away, and like Melina was trying to chase Johnny, and then like Melina was fighting Johnny and Katana, and at the end, Katana, was literally just like slices her head off, like completely, like destroys her, like no more Melina. And it was interesting because like it was a nice way to show how the the characters itself, like how did they like develop like into the people they were.
Yeah.
And so it was a nice like little prequel to how Mortal Kombat kind of came about.
Yeah, and I love, like, for what it's worth and how short the episodes are, and I'm pretty sure that the second season never finished. I think
you're right. I think it didn't finish.
But for what it is, I absolutely love like that show. And I wish they would have done more of it. I absolutely love the show, and I love that the guy who played like Shang Tsung was the same guy, and I'm pretty sure like they continued that same narrative. Like when he met with Liu Kang,
Yeah. Yep.
like they were having like that same conversation. Like you beat me in that first tournament. He's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I, cut your head off or whatever.
Yeah.
They were having that conversation, and it was like, whoa, they're talking about Mortal Kombat 95. But
Yeah.
they're having that conversation, so it's like all these episodes like link back to that movie.
Yeah.
And so you're really looking at like that movie and this show being kind of like the background stories for that movie. And for the time that show came out, like some of those actors in that show in the episodes are pretty big name guy like people.
I
Like Jax I recognized.
Well, Jax, yes, but the others personally, when I
Some
looked
of
at
the
them,
others I recognized. But I just loved what they did. Like especially with the Melina Katana episode, like mixing that live action with that particular like Borderlands animation style.
yeah, kind of like the
Like
animated, not so much like it's not cartoonish, but
yeah.
it has like drawings.
It's like Borderlands
Yeah.
almost. I loved what they did with that episode, but in general, like I just love that whole thing. Like I wish they would have done more with it, but it's a really good like what they did with it was really good. Now,
Yeah.
Conquest that came out back in 98, 99, no.
So
No.
you're saying it was like trash, like not iconic, not worthy, not like cult classic kind of a thing.
It's like if you go back and watch the show Hercules with Kevin Sorbo.
Yeah. Okay.
It's that 90s acting. It's just terrible.
It's junk.
It's
okay.
junk, yeah.
So, all right, man. Since I know our favorite one we want to talk about, here it is.
So this one, they have a podcast of their own.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think this one, honestly, for future projects, if studios don't take what these guys are doing, and I'll get to the name of this TV show, you guys probably have already figured it out. If they don't take what these guys are doing and apply it to any future projects, they're just crazy. Because
agree.
this show is probably isn't even the word I should be using. It's by far the closest adaptation ever made.
And I agree, and that's why we saved it for last.
Yeah, no pun intended.
No pun intended on this.
So the game that we're referring to, the TV show that we're referring to, is The Last of Us, and this one, has Pedro Pascal as Joel, and right now there's been 8 episodes, which on Sunday, which is tomorrow for us,
Yeah.
episode 9 will air. So by the time this episode airs, all 9 season, the whole season will be available to watch.
But
If you are not watching this show, you need to watch the show. But what I would say, if you have availability to play the game, what you need to do is you need to go get the game and you need to play it as a companion to this show. Because I can tell you right now, when you play the game and you watch the show, your mind will be completely blown.
And I also can say this too, is that when you're playing the game, listen to what they're saying, right? Listen to how they're, talking and how they're interacting, and then literally watch the show. And I guarantee you'll be like he was just saying, like, it was mind blowing. It's this like ultra level experience that you'll never get unless you do that, right? And I would say that with this TV show, it's definitely, like he said, like the closest adaptation TV show you can get. And honestly, with the episode 9 coming out tomorrow, we'll probably just do like a little theory on like what probably could happen as long as we can get, close to it. But if the show's going the way it is, I think episode 9 will be a very a very interesting episode to watch. And as well as if you're playing the game, definitely take a look at it because I'm not going to go into it, but like The Last of Us Part 1, if you're playing the game and then let's say you watch the episode hopefully tomorrow, you'll understand that it's if as long as it comes close to it, it's season 1's going to be phenomenal as a whole. Like it's just going to be that great.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Last of Us, I will say this, like watching a lot of the scenes from the TV show to the actual like game itself, like one that sticks out to me, and it was actually, I think it was like episode 7, maybe it was when like Ellie and her friend were at the, it was like that mall, right?
Yeah.
So I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it's an episode or part 2 in the game when they like introduce that particular, reference. But it was interesting because what they're doing is pretty much identical to what they were doing in the game, and you'll see a lot of the scenes where Joel and Ellie are talking, and it's literally
It's
like
word for word, and
it's
it's scene for scene. And what I do like too is, are they making changes? Yes, they are. But
Very subtle.
the changes only affect the story in a positive. They only drive the story forward. Like, one of the changes, like Joel in the show was stabbed.
Right.
In the game, he fell off and was impaled.
Right.
It's a subtle change, but they did it in the show to drive the story forward for episode 8. And I'm not going to do any spoilers. Like, the show is still on, so
Yeah, we're not
going to go there. But like, if you go, especially like TikTok, and you look up Last of Us, you can find video game scene, show scene, and where the show might not be exact to the background or how the characters are standing, they're word for word spot on. So when, like I said before, when you're playing the game and you're in that moment and you watch the show, as a person who is a gamer, when I'm watching a show and then I can go to the game and I can relive that moment, that's what I want to see in an adaptation. I want to see the game I'm playing on the screen.
I will mention one thing too, that like when you were mentioning subtle differences. So one of the bigger ones that I remember seeing in episode 1 in particular is when his daughter Sarah, if I'm not mistaken, that's her name. So she in the game, she was actually by herself, which that was correct in the very beginning. And what happened was is she was looking around the house trying to find Joel, and she comes down the stairs, was looking around. But here's the subtle difference. So in the game, she was in the house, and Joel comes back through the porch. Basically, he comes back in, and he's getting chased by these these fungal creatures.
Clickers?
Right? Like, what is it?
Clickers?
Oh, clickers. Well, yeah, clickers. My bad. So clickers, right? And they were, but again, they didn't know what they were called. So, and he's like trying to like escape, and then Tommy is out front with the truck, and he's like right there, ready to go. Now the difference is that Sarah goes to the neighbor's house,
right,
and then finds out that the neighbors were turned. Well, actually, it was the great. It looked like the grandmother.
The grandmother.
Yeah. Like she looked weird at first.
There was that really creepy scene and where she's in the background and like her mouth is just really gaping open, and she's like, "Oh yeah, it's
a unique concept." But then like you see the guy laying on the floor, and he's like, "Help me," and he's like sitting there, and she's like looking around and sees the grandmother just like basically like eating her daughter, basically,
right.
And like she runs out because the dog, if I'm not mistaken, too, was also like not wanting to go back inside, and immediately runs away. And then Joel is outside waiting with Tommy to then escape, and then they go on. But like those are the slight differences that I've been seeing from time to time.
I mean, they made a pretty big change from the game to the show. Where in the game, if you've played the game, you remember there were areas where you had to wear a gas mask.
Yeah,
because there were spores, and in the show, they didn't use that same mechanic because you wouldn't see anything. It'd be impossible for them to, see the characters and see what they were doing.
I
So
mean,
they
yeah,
moved to having these kind of fiber, fibers that were, you know,
yeah, I know what you're talking
um,
about. It's like it's
tendrils out of their mouths.
yeah,
Um, and it actually, I mean, it doesn't. Does it change the story? You could argue that it does,
right.
but I think it also moves that story forward because now you have a root of infection, and yeah, you do. You can't contain spores, so
Right.
they would have to somehow explain like how is there only spores here and not in this whole room?
Right. I mean,
How are there only spores in front of the house, but not in this whole neighborhood?
so and you make an excellent point. I mean, the only way maybe they could do that is like if they had like a gas like effect or something like that, but maybe, but like you couldn't get
There's
as
just more
accurate.
storytelling, right? Yeah.
And so with those like tendrils coming out of their mouths, like that, I as close as you can get. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not going to change the story like completely, And I think that the TV show, like Matt was saying, is an excellent, you know, way to show a game into, let's say, a bigger picture or, a
Yeah.
TV show or anything like that, because it really demonstrates that the developers of the game, the creators really, and the producers and directors of the TV show clearly were talking together.
Right.
And they didn't like say, hey, we're going to change the story completely. Like, no, they were like, hey, we're going to take your game
This
and
is
then
the
we're going to do it.
blueprint. This is what we want to do. Okay, well, we want to make this change because like the story with Frank. In the
Right.
game, Frank was already dead. He was hanging.
Right. No, I agree.
In
And
the show, Frank, you get introduced to Frank, and there's a whole story.
right.
Now, when Joel finally finds them, they're both already dead.
Right, and I know in the game, like they actually see Frank, but like in the show, yeah, I mean, I don't think most people want to see what happened to them
No,
laying on the
no.
floor, but I agree that progression of the story and how it goes, and even like when they find Tommy and
And it was that episode was it was a really beautifully told story between the two of them.
yeah,
Like, it was a really great way to drive that narrative. Because in the game, you don't really know what was going on.
so I know we're not talking about spoilers, of course, but here's my theory on, let's say, the next episode that's coming out. So if we're basing it off the game, from what I can remember, is they do end up finding the Firefly um, outpost that they've been trying to do this entire time, and I'm not gonna go into like really detailed with it, but I know that they try to get a cure, but then there's some complications. There's some different like motives behind like if they can do it, if they can't do it, and it was really up to Ellie to make that decision. But if I'm not mistaken, it'll be interesting to see how, especially with the ending of this season, like how can they, move forward, because in season, we'll say 2, technically Ellie is this, we'll say, like older woman who's probably in her mid 20s, I would say, in this time. So it's like a 10-year roughly gap, give or take. So it'd be interesting to see how they transition Ellie, right? And I mean, Joel's old, man. Like he's already what, like in his 50s probably now.
Yeah.
So you'll probably see him as like the 60-year-old guy who definitely has more white hair than any, or more black and like salt and pepper kind of hair. But I think it'll be definitely interesting to see how they progress, because I know, again, not trying to go ahead, but like in part 2, they do end up, going to, I believe it's Tommy's like outpost that they originally saw in the beginning, or like when they saw, or I believe it is the same one. And so they like make their own lives, and they've established themselves. But again, not going into spoilers, but I think it'll be hopefully as interesting with how they can reference the ending of the part one into the last episode of the season, because it's like we've already mentioned, like it's honestly one of the best references to do, and I hope that they stick with that, because if they don't, we'll be coming knocking on your door and be like, hey man, what the hell, like
Yeah.
this is not what we signed up for when we saw this at the beginning. So
Yeah. And like I said, I think future projects, even if it's not attached to, PlayStation or Naughty Dog or whatever, future projects, future video game adaptations, whether they're movies or TV shows, if you don't take what Last of Us is doing and look at like these guys are really being successful. What are they doing that all these other projects have basically failed? How do we apply it to future projects? Because I fully believe that when it's time for awards, this show is going to be right up there.
I agree. Like
This show is going to be right up there. And it's probably going to be one of the first video game adaptations that's actually going to get an award. Yeah, I said it right here.
Right here, right
on
now.
On this podcast. It's probably going to be one of the first shows that's going to get an actual award.
And I if it doesn't,
I would be surprised. But this show is that good. And as an adaptation, it's that good. And I think, just to tie it up, you can apply this to many other different potential projects. In, Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Fallout. There are so many projects that you could apply the same logic to that would make excellent stories, but you have to keep it to the blueprint of the source material.
Right. And like another one that I wanted to mention was like God of War, right? It's an excellent
God
series.
of War, yeah.
Would be an excellent
if you
showing.
keep it to the blueprint.
Right, exactly.
If you go ahead and like, oh, well, we only want the characters and we want to create a whole new story. No. It's going to be just like some of these other, like Blood Rain. Nobody watches it because it's crap.
And probably no one played the game unless you were that hardcore gamer.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, to really kind of, end with this, it's really necessary to follow what the game and hopefully the TV shows will actually do, because if they don't, that's where you lose your followers. That's where you lose the community. You lose all these things, because if you can't get one thing right, then why bother even doing it? Like, you might as well cancel it. You might as well just say, nope, we're done. That's it. Like, or just get a new director. Clearly, you need to find people that can actually listen.
Or like Resident Evil. Don't call it Resident Evil. Call it something else.
Yeah, call it like a spinoff or something else.
Some other zombie movie.
Like the other zombie movie that no one ever wanted to watch. I don't know, something stupid. But I think, Matt, that concludes, right? So when it comes to, you guys, again, we appreciate everything that you have been doing so far. Hopefully, again, you'll start liking and sharing, giving out to your neighbors. Go to some homeless dude. Let him know if he has some kind of way to listen to it. Go ahead. I don't care. We appreciate anybody who wants to listen to us. So next week, we're going to be talking about the video game series or just video games in general. Stuff that Matt and I have played over the years, things that we definitely...
Very nostalgic episode.
Yeah.
It'll be bringing back some old school video games.
Or maybe more modern, depending on, where we played it. But like games that we have felt that have changed our perspective on gaming, and as well as just, moving forward with how games should have been. But again, we appreciate everything you guys are doing. And again, stay tuned. You'll find out.
Yeah, so be sure to check out our Facebook page. We encourage you guys to engage in conversation with us. Send us a message, comment, do something on a Facebook page. We want to talk to you, so talk to us. We have the Facebook page for a reason, so, we will post more often. So just reach out to us, give us show ideas. If there's something that you guys want us to talk about, don't keep it to yourself. we will use it in a show. It may not be episode 5, but we will, mark it down and we will do it as an episode. We will at least talk about it. And it might be in a future episode. And we may actually call you by name and say, hey, this person brought us this idea. Let's talk about it.
Right. And the other thing I want to mention too, real quick, is, down the road, we are looking at trying to do like different social media platforms, like maybe, Instagram, further away down, but maybe like TikTok if we can
Discord,
get, that kind of stuff. But just keep in mind that for now, Facebook is our really, main platform. So that way, if you guys want to talk to us, email us, whatever the case is, right? Go ahead and do that, because we'll definitely make sure we'll reach out to you.
So my challenge from week 2 is still there. You guys keep liking, keep sharing, no matter what. We appreciate, you guys staying tuned every week. And as always, stay geeky.